it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and this is episode 99, and the second to last episode, focusing on Steven Spielberg, and this is his adaptation of West Side Story, and we have Heath Lynch joining me this time. Heath, thank you so much for coming on.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And before we get started, I'd like Heath to shamelessly plug wherever you all can find him.
You can most readily find me on Letterboxd at the One Heath Bar, or if you want, you can search Heath Lynch. Either one would come up. You can also find me on other websites, including SiftPop and shortboxed.com.
And there you go. And we have quite the stacked group of coming attractions for our first part of our show before we get into West Side Story, and then some recommendations to wrap things up. But this comes out December 23rd. It's Christmas weekend, which means there's a crap ton of movies. And Heath, what are you most excited to see?
I am most excited to see this weekend the movie that has been on my number one spot for most anticipated movies all year, and that's Damien Chazelle's Babylon. I could not be more jazzed for this movie. See what I did there, Damien? Jazzed, haha. I love everything that this man has made so far. Both Whiplash and La La Land are in my top 100 films of all time. I think they are tremendous. Although I don't think it's quite as good as those. I still absolutely adore First Man as well. It's really hard to continually churn out top 100 of all time masterpieces. And by comparison, it may seem lower, but still First Man is better than many films that are made. Yeah, I've been just excited for this. I'm not even the only one. I'm sure, other critics, fans of his work, and of course the Academy are looking forward to it as well, because this is the exact type of movie that award season loves to eat up, because it's a movie about the movie industry and going to the talkies from the silent film era, and all kinds of crazy shenanigans going down in Hollywood with a stellar cast. Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, and so many other big names. And it, based off of the trailers and all the hype around it, it just looks like a wild ride, and I can't be more stoked for it.
Oh, I can guarantee you it is, because it was something else.
Yeah.
It was an experience for 3 hours and 8 minutes, and might have one of the most impactful endings of basically any film this year. And that's saying something, because there's films like The Fablemans that exists. And just
Yep.
within the first 2 minutes, you know exactly what kind of movie this is and the kind of debauchery and just disgustingness that you're going to experience watching this movie. It's getting very lukewarm reviews from critics, with right now the tomato meter's at like 64% on it. But I think it's going to be a hard sell to a lot of people. But I definitely think it was worth it.
Well, it's also interesting because it just depends on where you go. I mean, like on not IMDb, on like Letterboxd right now, it's sitting at 3.8. And 3.8 on Letterboxd is nothing to scoff at, but at the same time, it has less than 4,000 reviews right now, and people that have marked as watching it. So who knows where this is going to go? All I know is I'm excited. I'm highly anticipating it, and even if it's towards that lower end of things, like it's showing right now on Rotten Tomatoes, I still think it at least may not be the best ride, but it sure heck look like it's going to be a wild one, and I'm ready to take the ride.
There's definitely some places with like score that I think it should really get some attention. Oh, I've been listening to a couple of tracks from it just nonstop because I can't get them out of my head. And some of the
based off of the posters and trailers I've seen, I would think costumes, it's got to be at play there as well, at bare minimum.
There's a couple of actors that could really get some real buzz, and if supporting actor wasn't insane this year,
supporting actor is nuts this year.
Nuts. Like, I think legitimately 4 of the nominations could just come from 2 films.
Yes.
between Banshees and the Fablemans,
Yep.
and none of them are
And
going
the
to win.
fifth one's coming
So,
from Everything Everywhere, and that's the one that's probably going to win.
yeah, but like Brad Pitt is amazing in this movie, and Margot Robbie's amazing in this movie. It's something else. My most anticipated, which I'm going to include another one because I've actually seen this one, is Glass Onion, but it is coming out on Netflix now. So I did
Yeah,
get to see it in theaters at Thanksgiving when it
I
came
did as
out.
well.
Yep, and it's such a great sequel.
Oh,
Oh
it's just so
man,
fun.
and it has tinges of Bond, and like you could feel that in the score. I'm just like, wait a minute, and he just knows how to shake things up. And I really hope Janelle Monáe gets some
I
attention
could
for
see her
supporting
getting a
actress.
supporting actress nom. I really could. I think it was the Golden Globes already gave her one. Not that the Globes really mean anything anymore, but
Yep.
at least it shows that some people are looking at her because
Yeah.
she is terrific in this. And what I'll say is, yeah, I saw it over Thanksgiving as well. I do still think the original one is better, but not by much. They are both
Mhm.
spectacular films, and if you are a fan of the original Knives Out, then I'd be shocked if you're not also a fan of Glass Onion. You're probably going to like it and be very entertained. You're going to laugh. You're going to have a good time.
Absolutely. There's so many other things like the new Whitney Houston film, I Want to Dance with Somebody. You have Puss in Boots coming out a couple days
Yeah.
before. You have Matilda, the musical.
Matilda I actually want to see. That looks great. I love musicals. The original
Mhm.
Matilda is such a sweet and sincere magical film. So I would love to see a musical version of it.
And then we have Women Talking,
Yep. Another
Corsage,
big one.
both coming out limited release. And my pick, my real pick, because I haven't seen it yet, which is also limited, which is Living, the Ikaru remake starring Bill Nye, which get that man an Oscar nomination apparently.
Yeah.
At least that's what this film's gonna. You have this, you have The Whale, that are really sending up some great performances, and you know what? There's just too many actors that I love getting buzz for Best Actor this year. Feeling so conflicted. Brendan Fraser should get it at this
I
point.
think that he will. I think it's not only his performance, which is already being lauded, is just absolutely tremendous. It's the response he got. Was it at Toronto? Where was it? Where he got this like 8 minute standing ovation?
It was,
Uh,
but
Wherever, or
somebody.
Venice, maybe, I don't remember. But it's that, and then of course his personal story and all that he went through. It's just like, how just give it to the man. Like it's
Yeah,
his. Which stinks because, like you said, like Bill Nye, he's just gonna get over. Colin Farrell and Banshees is just gonna, but whatever.
it is how it is. But this
Yep.
is some stacked content coming
Yeah.
everybody's way from all kinds of places. Netflix has both Glass Onion and Matilda. They're going to be getting plenty of people sitting and watching their
I
streaming
can't wait
service.
to rewatch Glass Onion. I know I'm going to
Yep.
be on it Christmas Day. Just been like, oh yeah, we're done with presents, right? Glass Onion time. Let's go.
And a lot of, oh my God, is it popping up somewhere near me? Releases. And
Yeah.
then I'll be seeing probably I Want to Dance with Somebody on Friday because I have a half day and I'm like, movie time.
Yep. I got
Um,
to review that one for SiftPop as well. So I have to find that and Babylon. I got to review both of them this week. So I need to find theaters. I need to get out there.
yeah, I just finished up my ones for SiftPop for December with Bardo that came
Yeah.
out.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, was that something. Boy, was that something.
That's such a weird one because that got so much buzz and people are like, oh yeah, Alexander's back and he's gonna, it felt like it had some of the buzz like Birdman had behind it when it first came out, and like I thought maybe it would start to get a lot of award, but it's just fading away really quick.
Yeah,
And
and a lot of the reviews are
yeah, including your
fine.
own. Uh,
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm
yeah,
like, I see what you're doing there. You want to make your own 8.5, but like, not
it's a
everybody's
lot.
Fellini. and to
In
pull that
fact,
off,
very
it's
few
tough.
people are. Arguably just one.
Yeah, there's arguably only one Federico Fellini. Well, there's probably actually more, to be
Yeah.
honest, but like,
Yeah.
only one of them is a famous director.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the season, so there's a lot of things to choose from. So enjoy it, take it all in,
Yep.
including giving this one a rewatch, which is turning 1 year old West Side Story. And it was the sign that Spielberg was back. And
As
better,
if he left.
well, back making masterpieces
Yeah.
because
Fair enough.
I just watched the BFG and Ready Player One, and they're certainly not. So,
Nope.
but this is Steven Spielberg taking the 1957 musical, adapting it, keeping it in that time period, you know, making some changes, which honestly, and we'll obviously talk about this, but I do like this more than the original. And
Same.
it's, directed the hell out of this. I think that's one of the big differences is like, I love the original West Side Story, but like, this is an amazing director
Yeah.
directing this movie.
Yeah, I
And you
think
could
I think to
feel
give
that.
this due diligence, we should spend about 5-10 minutes here on the original, because I know that there's a lot of people that almost hated that this was even made, because the original is, by all intents and purposes, considered by many people to be just a perfect film. It's a masterpiece. While I personally would disagree that it's a perfect film or a masterpiece, I do consider it to be a great film, and I say this as a lover of film and a lover of musicals and a lover of West Side Story. Uh, I think the original is tremendous from 1961, and it won Best Picture and it won acting awards and it won so much. And but the thing that I would like to point out about it is the original West Side Story, from my point of view, everyone can interpret it differently, but from my point of view, is a film of the play just put in practical on location sets. When the Sharks and the Jets are fighting each other, they're not throwing punches. There's no haymakers. No one's falling to the ground in agony. It's choreographed dance fighting, like you would see on a stage musical.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they position and frame some of these shots don't seem very natural from a filmmaking cinematic kind of perspective. It seems like someone who just kind of had the camera and just pointed. I think in particular, when they're in the dress shop doing their vows during the wedding song, and it's a still frame camera that I don't think moves, and they just kind of move around the shop as the camera just lets them do their thing, and it doesn't feel very organic. It's kind of unnatural, and that's part of the reason why I don't think it's a perfect movie, is because it feels like a stage production, just on a practical set instead of on a physical stage. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I love that movie. I've seen it a lot. It's tremendous. But if you're looking for a cinematic experience, something that feels like a movie, not a stage production, then the 2021 West Side Story is the one you want. And I would concur that because of that difference, that small difference, but very big, important difference in the grand scale, I consider the remake, this new one, to be much more entertaining, enjoyable, and heartfelt, emotional. And I consider it to be the definitive version of the story, even though they did change like some of the orders of some of the songs, or whatever. So what are your thoughts on the original and how it played out?
Well, first off, need a palate cleanser after
Yeah.
some intense violence.
Yeah.
Need to feel pretty. But it's one of those kinds of things. Like, I do agree, it definitely feels much more like a stage production than this does. And I just think from like, I didn't even think of like specific examples, but this new film definitely does feel so much more cinematic. And how can it? It's Spielberg, it's Kaminsky putting this all to
Yep.
film. And it's one of those kinds of things where I don't know how well it aged as a film in terms of like the technical aspects of it. It's like you watch it and it feels very much of like this is made in the early 60s
Mhm.
and
The
like,
colors, the costumes.
yeah.
It-
And I think even from like a casting perspective, you know, it's obviously of its time where you have a lot of people with darkened skin playing
yeah.
and people that are playing races that they're not.
The
And
the one I always think of in particular is Bernardo, who's a very prominent, important character in this story, is played by George Chakiris. I probably am pronouncing it wrong. And he is a white dude that I prominently know as one of the background dancers in White Christmas, Irving Berlin's 1954 White Christmas. So it is not. That's another thing going against it, where it's just like this does no, just no.
and like Natalie Wood and
Yeah,
it's just, you know, it was that time. They didn't really care. It's just
yeah,
like if this is accurate or properly representing the character in the background. It's just who's the biggest name person that we could throw in here, like a Natalie Wood, and get that attention. And even Rita Moreno, who's fantastic, has gone through multiple films where they've darkened her skin to make her be a particular role. And well, it's like how many of them actually did their own singing
yeah.
in the original film? She did.
Yep.
Most of them did not. And which that's another thing. And that's like this feels so much more natural because it feels like it's these actors doing the whole performances and stuff like that. And apparently this can't escape any casting controversies because you know
Yeah.
they buried Ansel Elgort like it was nobody's business with the marketing of this film, which I know a lot of people were like the whole cast is great except for Ansel Elgort. I'm like, I really liked Ansel Elgort in this. It's just depending on if you feel
Yeah.
comfortable with him being in this movie or not. But like, he's a really talented actor and he does his job. But there's some career making performances in this film.
Hmm.
And it makes me sad that like Ariana DeBose, her first thing that I saw her in after this was Westworld. And she was just like almost nothing character in that. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I wanted more. And it's
You
just
just
like,
won an
no,
Oscar. Congratulations. Go back to
congratulations.
nothing roles.
You're some random character that just gets thrown in there in Westworld that I can't even tell you what her character's name was or what
Yeah.
purpose she had in the show. Just,
I think honestly, most people probably just know her from Hamilton, if we're being completely honest.
and I didn't even realize she was in Hamilton. So there you
Yeah,
go.
she's one of the sisters.
And then Rachel Zegler, who at this point should have been in a comic book movie, but Warner Brothers can't keep their crap together and now has to release Shazam next year. Um, but
Oh
like
my God, Warner Brothers.
that's a whole
That's a
entire
whole
video.
nother thing that we're not getting into, but damn.
No, and like they have some like I love Mike Feist who plays Riff.
He's
And
my favorite part of the movie.
he's so
No exaggeration. I think he is tremendous. And I actually think he got royally snubbed from a nominations perspective in the award season last year. I think as much, and I love Ariane DeBose. I thought she was fantastic. I think Mike Feist was even better
yeah, he was
as
fantastic. And
Riff.
you even have some really strong veteran anchoring performances with I love the inclusion of Rita Moreno here.
Mm-hmm.
That character is so much more interesting than the character that was originally in
Yeah.
the show. It had so many layers. And then between Brian Darcy James and Corey Stoll, like
Yeah.
Corey Stoll, I'm like, what a bastard.
He's
Like,
becoming a great character actor. Just like he can do these small bit awkward roles. And I'm enjoying him doing this at this point in his career.
And Shrek from Shrek the Musical himself, Brian Darcy James, his Officer Krupke is great.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really enjoyed him a lot. And that's the thing. Like, here's the thing. They didn't record any new music or anything like that for
Mm-mm.
this movie. They just used the music from the show. But like these musical numbers feel like they have so much more energy.
So
And
much more life to them.
oh my god, the two that really stick out to me, one, the Officer Krupke one when they're in the police station
Yeah,
is
just
so much
absolutely
fun.
destroying it. And it's really crazy how quickly actually you go back and watch that particular scene and the transitions they're doing from setting up these sets, like these
Uh-huh.
improv sets, like, oh, we're going to really quickly make a jailhouse or a courtroom or whatever. And how quickly they slide. And there's very few cuts in that scene.
Mhm.
It's quite impressive how that was all choreographed.
And the In America song is so much better
Yeah.
with it not being at
On
night on
a
top of
confined rooftop at
yeah.
night. Yeah.
Oh my god. And just the costume design and the colors and everything. And it's just so much life to it. And the, just I loved that
Yeah.
song so much. And like even rewatching this yesterday, I'm just like, I wanted to get up and dance.
Yep. And I hate dancing, and still, yeah. So from my perspective, again, if you follow me on Letterboxd, you know this, Shane. I know you know this, but this was my favorite movie of last year. I thought it was uh, beyond perfect. Like I gave it a perfect 5 out of 5 score. I think it is a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best musicals ever made, and I am a musical fanatic. Uh, I love this film. Um, there's so much that's being done right throughout this picture, from its adaptation to its rearrangement of that adaptation and the book that goes with it, so that, like you said, there's some levity after certain really harsh moments, or pacing of things that changes. Like the big one for me is the Be Cool Boy song, which in the original was after the scruff, but here it's played before to try to like calm the people, like, okay, we don't need to fight, and it doesn't work. They still end up fighting,
Mhm.
but man, it just feels so much more organic with these slight changes. um it might seem silly now in hindsight, but going into this, a lot of people wondered if Steven could even do this. Like you said, yeah, he's one of the greatest directors of all time. Pretty much everyone acknowledges that. He's, arguably on the Mount Rushmore of all directors ever. But he just did Ready Player One and BFG, and people are like, I don't know if he can, do another serious movie again, let alone a musical. He'd never done a musical before. Like, that was a common narrative thread. Like, can Steven direct it? Yes, he can direct a musical. He can direct anything he wants to. You know why? Because he's Steven effing Spielberg, and he's one of the
Yeah.
best to ever do it. And like, shame on all of us for ever doubting him. Like you said, coming back with uh Janusz Kaminski as a cinematographer. Even this movie opens with a 2.5 minute long one take as it just slowly pans over this
Mhm.
decrepit section of Manhattan that's being bulldozed, and it just like slides and flies across as we just see like such a great picture of this world building,
Mhm.
sets the stage for the geography of where the drugstore is. Like, it's just doing so much, and it's such seemingly a simple shot, but it does so much to like establish everything that's going to go down in this movie, down from environment to tone, the music that starts to play in the background. And I remember seeing this in theaters and being like, within 5 minutes, I was like, oh crap, this movie's going to get me. Like, I'm going to be enraptured. And I was the whole time. I have no shame in admitting I was crying by the end of this movie. Like, it's just that powerful. You talk about some of these songs, these musical numbers, they're just perfectly choreographed. Uh, and yeah, I hate dancing. I get so embarrassed. It's not my thing. But man, when they're at the school dance and that mambo number starts up, I'm like, this is some of the coolest stuff you'll ever see. Complete one takes, not slicing and dicing the editing so that we can't appreciate the choreography. Same with America. When they're dancing on the streets or through
Yeah.
the marketplace, like, you can actually see these people making these incredible movements with their body, and especially with some of these outfits, these dresses that these women are wearing are like flowing,
Yep.
like they're sliding through water or something. It's gorgeous. It's visually stunning. The compositional palette of the colors mixed with the cinematography is just mind-blowing. There's one shot that's one of my favorite. It's when Ansel is singing, I think it's Maria, and he's walking through like the back alleys and he steps on a puddle, and it's just like lit up by street lights, but it looks like he's walking in the middle of the galaxy. Like there's just stars around him, and it like pans out and it's just him standing in a puddle. It's like the simplest trick in the book, but it looks beautiful. And it's that level of cinematic romance and beauty that Steven brings to this project that elevates it above the original and elevates it above so many films. That just, this feels larger than life. And it's crazy how he can take this movie that's a remake of a movie that already won Best Picture, that's a remake that was an adaptation of one of the greatest musicals of all time, that in and of itself is essentially just Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.
Yep.
And it's just like, yeah, no, this is still even better. It's nuts how he pulls it off.
That sequence with Maria and Tonight, just her on the fire escape and that just little spotlight.
Yep.
And it's just like pop. And then that shot of her like from the trailer where it's just like up close to her face.
Oh, and she's looking through the grates and the steps. Yeah.
It just that
it's knowing angles, it's knowing how to frame the camera. It's funny now in hindsight after seeing The Fabelmans and knowing the final scene of that movie. And they're just like, you know what's interesting? The horizon line at the top, that's great. If the horizon line's at the bottom, that's great. If the horizon line's in the middle, it's boring. It's shit. And it's just like, and you can see it. Just, it's very clear that Steven did learn from that. And like in this movie, he has such an understanding with how to move the camera, how life organically flows, and where to track it and follow it. When to use dollies, when to not, when to use a crane. He's one of the best. He is. It's insane.
Because it's like you could watch a musical and just see giant wide shots of a whole bunch of people like dancing and stuff like that, and just like there's nothing interesting or cinematic or engaging about how this is being portrayed. It's just here it is.
Yep.
And this is nothing like that. And I do think it's really hard to direct musicals. And Steven Spielberg is amazing. So he did amazing. And he sure did. And because, one of my biggest things is like, I've definitely had reactions to like, oh, that person's directing a musical. Case in point, Aladdin. When they announced Guy Ritchie was directing a musical, I'm just like, but why?
Or here's another movie that I'll give you one that hasn't even come out yet. So I could potentially eat my words, but I don't think I'm going to. And that's oh god, now I'm forgetting his name. What's his face? Doing the new Joker movie. Todd Phillips, right?
Oh, yep.
And how this new Joker, what are they calling it? Joker a la fall or something. And it's going to be a musical starring him, starring Joaquin returning with Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. Folie à Deux, I'm sorry, is what it's called. And I hate it already. I hate everything about this movie. The first Joker didn't need a sequel, and to make a sequel that's a musical is just. And Todd Phillips is still. This guy directed The Hangover, and he directed Old School. He barely got away copying Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver and King of Comedy to direct the first Joker, and he, in my mind, didn't really pull that one off. And now he's going to do a musical. Like, again, I'm prepared to eat my words in a couple years if that be the case, but I don't think I'm going to. It blows my mind. But yeah, like this one is just like, oh yeah, of course Steven could do this because he's literally one of the best to ever do this. So why did we doubt him?
Mm-hmm. And
we've seen him do everything else.
And like his next film's going to be a Frank Bullitt story, and he's going to make this detective thriller, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
and there's probably going to be amazing car chase in it at some point because, like, how can't you? Uh,
Yeah.
at this point, it's just like it was. And here's the thing, especially after rewatching all of his filmography, I was pretty harsh on the 2010s for Spielberg, and I'm a lot less because, like, in hindsight, after rewatching all these films, it's like he still had Lincoln, The Post, and Bridge of Spies, which
Yeah.
most people just write off as like it's Oscar bait. It's
Yeah.
Spielberg. If anybody else directed those movies, those would be like one of their best films.
He's a victim of his own success at this
Uh-huh.
point. I genuinely do feel like that because, yeah, even something like The Post, when we look at The Post, we're like, oh, it's one of Spielberg's lesser films. It's just a weaker version of All the President's Men, yada, yada. But if you actually go and just watch it, don't tell yourself that it's Steven Spielberg. It is captivating. It has movement to it, incredible pacing. It's well acted. Meryl Streep is fantastic in the transformation that she goes through with her character throughout that film. And yeah, if anyone else directs that movie, it's a contender at the Oscars. It's not a
Yep.
pity nomination like it kind of ended up being, but it would be a contender. But because it's Steven Spielberg, we're like, oh, this man did Jaws and he did Saving Private Ryan, but more importantly, he did Schindler's List. He can do better than this, and so it's just like, yeah, we'll give him the nomination because it's Steven, but like
Yeah.
he's not going to win.
But I really think that West Side Story shut people up, as it should,
Yes,
because this was his best film
in
probably
years.
in like 20 years.
I would say it might just be his best one since Saving Private Ryan, or at least like Minority Report. Either way, you're looking at about 20 years.
Yeah. Because, like, Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report were around the same time. And
Yeah.
that's a long time for him to
Mm-hmm.
be pumping out. Like, obviously, he had some lows
And
with,
and again, he had great movies in there. You got
yeah,
Munich in there, you got Lincoln, like The Post. There's good movies, but there's Spielberg and then there's elevated Spielberg. And this was a return to elevated Spielberg. And I think anyone, maybe not anyone, but the vast majority of people that went out and saw this movie saw that very quickly, like, oh, this is a whole nother level.
which you made a very good point. Those who went out and saw it.
Yeah.
Between this and The
Unfortunately, this movie is,
Fablemans.
yeah, this movie even more than The Fablemans, but this movie really suffered the hands of COVID and people not, frankly, a lot of it is, if we're being honest, a lot of these movies, The Fablemans, West Side Story, are geared towards an older audience. This is going to be for people who would consider themselves cinephiles, deep lovers of film, people who follow things for the awards circuit. But if it's outside of that, you're just talking, your more average moviegoer. These are skewed to an older demographic. You're talking, I wouldn't even say 35 plus. You're probably actually looking at like 45 to 50 plus is who these are skewed towards. And, you're looking at lovers of musicals who generally is a demographic that skews older. You're looking at people who maybe remember the time, who, were teenagers or young adults in their early 20s in the late 50s. Well, that's certainly not going to be, anyone that's young. Same with The Fablemans, that takes place primarily in the 60s. Same thing, people want to go and wax nostalgic about a time period that they remember. That's not going to be you or me, Shane. We're going to go because we love Steven and we care about movies. But outside of people like us, like your average moviegoer, probably doesn't have interest in this. In fact, I would even go so far as to say some of the average moviegoers might not even know that The Fablemans came out,
Right.
and
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it's a real shame because he's enjoying what is a real late in his career renaissance here. Again, not that he truly ever went anywhere, but like a renaissance to his higher level of skill, and no one's coming out to see it, and it's a real shame because, man, seeing this, I saw this in IMAX opening weekend, and it blew me away.
That must have been something special seeing this on
Oh,
like this, like a whether it's Dolby or IMAX,
mm-hmm.
some kind of elevated format of watching this film. Like I watched this on my
The
4K.
sound was incredible. I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. I watched this on my 4K. Also, quick side note, I got to see Babylon on I think it was IMAX or it was
Nice.
Dolby or something. Oh my god. The sound. But like that's it, like this is a musical.
Yeah.
Take in the sound, the music. It's just absolutely amazing. And top to bottom, amazing cast, incredible filmmaking. They I feel like there was I haven't watched the original in a little while, I guess.
I rewatched the original last year. I watched it about a week before this one came out, but I haven't watched the original since. And I've watched this one 4 times since.
Yeah.
I think that says something, but
I'm trying
continue.
to because like I just feel like this has an even deeper look at the cultural
Hmm.
issues and like the societal issues. And I think one of the lines that Corey Stoll had of like, and you know what? When you come back, there's going to be a whole bunch of rich people in nice houses with Puerto Rican, uh, like doormen, and they replaced you because they ran you out. And I'm just like, damn.
Yeah.
It's just like that. Like it digs deep into
It
those
takes
kind of
everything that the first movie said in regards to political and social commentary and elevates it to another level. Again, that's
yeah.
just what Spielberg does. But this script is much more nuanced than the first
Mhm.
film. Another couple examples of that is in the first film, Rita Moreno's character, Anita, Ariana DeBose's character in this one, uh, she like the Jets try to rape her. I'm going to call it what it is. Like that's what
Yep.
it is. When she goes to try to peacefully deliver a message, she is cornered by the Jets, and they would have raped her had they not been stopped. And the movie plays it off almost like it's nothing, like it was a joke. In this one, and it's all the more impactful to me because it's Rita Moreno playing the older owner of the drugstore, the soda shop that stops it. Now she's the one stopping it instead of in the first movie it was happening to her, and she calls it out. She's like,
Yep.
"You guys are rapists. You guys are pigs." And I love that the movie went there. I would have hated in this day and age if the movie tried to shy away from that, but it doesn't in the slightest. It condemns the action of those boys highly, and I appreciate. And another example of how much more nuanced this is, and you probably know where I'm going, is the trans man that is
Mhm.
a definitively a trans man in this version of the film. In the original West Side Story, unless I'm interpreting it differently, but I don't think that I am, she's still a she, and she's just kind of portrayed as like a tomboy. Likes to
Yeah.
hang out with the guys, maybe wears overalls, likes to get dirty, but like she's a
That's probably what
tomboy.
they could get away with.
Yeah. But in this film, that is not the case. She is not a she, it's a he. He is a trans man. And I love that. I love that the film went there. I love that Steven is still at his age, at this point in his career, wanting to push boundaries
Yeah.
and make a statement about what love means and what acceptance means. And I think that's beautiful. And again, it would have been a lesser movie had he not been willing to do that. And
And I
he's
think
willing to do that. I think that's
one of the
important.
sadder moments is when the Jets finally acknowledge him.
Hmm.
And it's such a bad moment.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's sad because like he's going out the door when Anita's walking in. And it's
Yeah.
just like at this point, you're not really fans of what the Jets are doing.
No.
And you're just like, it took all of that to get any kind of acceptance. And now it's like, do you really want it
Yeah.
from where you're
Do you
getting
want
it?
to
Like,
do you
it's
want to tie yourself in
complicated.
with these guys who are objectively horrible people?
Yeah. It's tough. And the fight in
Oh,
this
the
is
fight in this is
brutal.
so much more brutal than the fight was in the first film. It's incomparable.
Yep. And this hits like a sledgehammer.
Hmm.
like how emotional that scene is, and you're just left just like so sad, and like you're just like all Tony wanted was to stop the fight, and then this is where it went.
Yeah.
And
Well, and again, I think this is a tribute to Spielberg. He sets it up so much better. This shot of the camera, that's the bird's eye view looking straight down in the middle. It almost sets it up like a basketball court. Like
yeah,
we're looking down at the center of the court, and you see the shadows creeping in from the side. And they used that in the trailer, I remember, at the
yeah,
Oscars earlier that year. And I was just like, oh my God. Like that shot is still so powerful. But just everything about how that was filmed, the the violence in those punches, it's so much more impactful than the original film. And because of that, it yields so much more empathy and emotion. And you feel bad for all of them, because you're all the only way I can take it is they're all in the wrong, and you hate that it got to that point for any of them.
yeah,
It's like, how rejected are they by society? How uh economically disenfranchised have they been, that they're all such lower class? And even though they don't even see that they're really in, from a class-based warfare point of view, they're actually on the same side.
yeah,
There's much more alike between the Sharks and the Jets than there are different, but they can't see that because they're so disenfranchised. And especially the Sharks, who are also, neglected to such racial profiling and mistreatment. And it's just the fact that it gets to that place, it hurts so much more in this movie than it does in the original. And the brutality of that scene carries so much more weight for me, that when the big moment comes where a couple of people die, you're just, it's heartbreaking. It's crushing. You're just like, your lives are over. Like
yeah.
you've ruined not just the literal lives that have just been ended, but like those that participated. Like you're done. Like what did you do? Why couldn't you reason? And oh man, it sucks. It's heartbreaking.
It's and just so much shattering promise and
Yeah.
love and opportunity from Anita's whole entire faith in America shattering,
Hmm.
which that was so powerful when she like curses them out on
Hmm.
her way out of that out of the store, and it's just like I felt every word so much. And this is how you remake something that seemingly doesn't need to be remade.
Yeah.
And Disney's been attempting that way too often, where it's just like, did you need to remake this? And there's certain things like with the Beauty and the Beast that I'm like, oh, I actually kind of like this better in the remake. It's still not a better movie.
No.
That overall, it still has plenty of flaws to it, but it made an effort to look at some of the things that are just like, this could be better.
Well, and I think one of
And
the biggest indicators for when a remake is viable is time.
yep,
You know, it had been 60 years since the original film.
yeah,
Society in this day and age changes a lot in 60 years. I'm not talking about 60 years, 500 years ago, and at which point 60 years is nothing. It's the blink of an eye and nothing's different. But nowadays, with the advancements in technology and how society shifts and changes and the way the world is governed around us, like 60 years is incredible. And so you can make this story and bring new levels of nuance and understanding to it. You can have a trans man. You can have someone being called out for allegations of attempted rape. You can have these deeper conversations about race and prejudices within society that the earlier film didn't offer. And I'm sure that in another 60 years, you could probably remake this again and find even new things to talk about. But when you talk about like things that are just quote unquote remake happy, when we get 3 different Spider-Men in less than 20 years, or Disney's here trying to make live action remakes of films from 15 to 25 years ago, I think time just needs to be more of
yeah,
a factor. And I understand that no studio executive is going to listen to little old me. My opinion is completely irrelevant, and they're going to do whatever they need to keep the spoke wheel turning and keep the money machine going. I get that, but man, it's clearly so much more impactful when you take the time to really invest in the story and culture and society and churn out a fresh way to tell a repeating story.
It's if you're gonna remake it, it better have been a bad movie with a great concept,
Yep.
or a film that's great or good but could use updated.
Yep.
And there's a
And
lot
this
of
is the
that.
latter.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this worked really well.
Yep.
Heath, do you have any last minute thoughts?
I do want to say one more thought. You touched on it briefly earlier, and that's with Ansel.
Mhm.
I want to say that, what's the best way to phrase this? If you are someone that, it's so funny. If you've seen Tar, and I know you have, this conversation holds new weight in today's world.
Mhm.
If you are someone that finds someone personally objectable because of some real world issues, there's nothing wrong with that. Have at it. Go for it. Hate that person's guts, condemn them for their actions, and don't support their work. Awesome. If you are able to, maybe not able is the right word, but if you are willing to separate the art from the artist and look beyond it, I think this one is worth your time to look beyond. I know a lot of people that I've seen write reviews on Letterboxd or elsewhere on IMDb that they even admit they've never seen it, but they give it, half of a star or 1 star just because Ansel's in it. And I don't think that's the way to affect change. I don't think you're helping anything. I think there's a better way to go about it. Because yes, what he is accused of doing is awful, and it is not endorsed in any way, shape, or form, and I condemn him for it if it is true, and I believe that it probably is. But if you can find it in you to still watch this movie with that in mind and trying to separate that from this character in this film, he is still great in this film. I know that there are some people that are like, oh, I think he's the worst part of the film. No, he is not the worst part of this film. I think you're kidding yourself if you think he is. He does a very great job. He has a tremendous singing voice. He's an amazing dancer. He has the stature and menacing presence of Tony. And I think he does incredibly well. I don't think he's the best part of this movie. I do think there are people that outshine him. Mike Feist, Ariana DeBose, Rachel Ziegler, they all do better than him. But he's still great. And I wanted to say this to say, if you do not like this man, I totally get it. And if you can't find it in you to watch this movie, completely fine. But if you do want to try to watch it, don't let his presence ruin it for you. Like, take him as just the character Tony. Don't look at him as Ansel Elgort, because this movie is still tremendous. And his presence doesn't change that. That's what I'll say.
And that is very fair. And, I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there that are in that space to change their perspective on those kinds of things. And you know where you stand with it. So
Yep.
if you didn't see this because of Ansel Elgort, makes me a little sad because this movie could have used more love. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
He's in it,
and I get it. Like, it makes me sad too, because I think this movie's tremendous. But again, I understand. If you don't want to see it because of him, I get it.
I have this conversation with my wife all the time because my wife is very much somebody that can't separate that. And I'm somebody that literally watches everything. And
yes, you do. It's insane.
Like, on some level, if you stopped watching movies with bad people in it,
you're gonna run out of movies to watch real quick.
And it's sad because it's reality, and actors are human beings too, and some of them are pieces of crap human beings. And you have real cannibals like Army Hammer, and it's like you could have decided not to watch Death on the Nile, which, to be frank,
You probably shouldn't have watched it because it's not that great.
it's the kind of thing where it's just like, I don't think you're missing much if you didn't watch that particular one. I
You're
do
not.
think you're missing a lot if you do skip West Side Story, but
Yep.
that is, in the end, up to you. And that's the thing. We're all adults here. You
Yep.
make your own decisions. But all I'm going to say is my last thoughts are this is a great movie. This is
Yeah.
an amazing movie. And Steven Spielberg did probably what most people thought was unthinkable, which is going out and making one of the most iconic musicals better.
Yeah.
And there you go.
I echo all of that. This is a tremendous film. It was my favorite film from 2021. It is my third favorite film so far in this new decade, which doesn't seem like it's been going that long, but it's already been 3 full years. And it's in my top 100 movies of all time. I think it's tremendous, and I absolutely adore it and love it passionately, and I absolutely wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who's willing to go see it.
And we all lived those 3 years in a time warp.
Oh man, it's such a blur.
Such a blur. Now, Heath, time to recommend to people. So I know you have quite the venture you do for SiftPop and have one particular film you want to tell everybody about.
Yeah, so one of the articles that I do for SiftPop is I go and do a retrospective on the Oscars, the Academy Awards, but I don't necessarily do it in the traditional sense of like, oh, so-and-so should have won this. I actually look at categories that don't even exist, or maybe categories that used to exist but have been discontinued, and I try to take a look at what or who should have won an award that's not even real, such as like Best Ensemble Performance, Best Directorial Debut, Best Stunts and Choreography. For the record, Academy, these should exist, please make them. Yeah, so I'm doing films of 1984 right now in preparation for an article about the Oscars of 85, and one of the ones I just watched again was Once Upon a Time in America, Sergio Leone's absolute masterpiece. I hate that this movie didn't even receive a single nomination at the Oscars, but as Shane and I were talking off camera beforehand, was that for those who don't know, there are 2 cuts of this film. One that was made in America that is barely 2 hours long, and it's hot garbage. And the actual real cut of this movie that was originally released and is considered the true cut of this film is almost 4 hours long, about twice as long as this one. And man, it's the 4-hour cut is tremendous. It is absolutely spectacular. One of the best epic American crime films you could ever see. It is a tremendous character study. It is a perfect movie to kind of hold a mirror up to society and make us look at ourselves and how we've become the America that we've become and what that means about us as a culture and as a societal peoples. And man, it's just so good. Sergio's arguably some of his best directing he's ever done. Probably right up there with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it stars big names like James Wood and a little guy maybe you've heard of called Robert De Niro. It's just
Bobby De Niro.
It's just awesome, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
Just imagine taking one of the greatest films of all time, like The Godfather, and cutting half of it out.
It's just so stupid. I don't know why they did that.
What? Are you kidding? It turned out poorly? Yeah. Just stupid stuff. We ruined everything.
They cut out over 100 minutes of the film. I mean, it's not going to be the right film when you do that. It's so dumb. They changed the ending as well. They didn't even just cut stuff out. They cut stuff out and changed things. It's dumb. It's so stupid.
Just to quote the Don, look what they did to my boy. Mm-hmm. That's just Sergio Leone standing over here next to all like the cutout film. It's like,
and this was the last movie he ever made. He died 5 years after this of I assume a broken heart.
Yep, terrible. Now I have a couple of recommendations here. One was I always like to put out a new film release, and this is actually a documentary released by Showtime, and it's Dio, Dreamers Never Die. And I'm a big metalhead, and I was so excited when I found out that this was coming out, and then I had to wait until it came out on Showtime, and it came out. I watched it, and made me feel some things. And like, because Ronnie James Dio unfortunately passed away, I think back in 2013.
It's been a minute.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
10 years. And
It's actually incredible how many big rock and metal names have passed away in the last decade, and it breaks my heart.
yeah, and this documentary lifts up a lot of like his early career that I'm like, this dude did a bunch of covers of like Engelbert Humperdinck and Tom Jones and stuff. And one of his managers is like, this is the direction your career is going to go in. Boy, was he wrong.
Yeah.
And just the impact that he had on metal music, the taking the Moloiki from his grandmother and creating a completely iconic thing that like has transcended metal music into just rock music, into just music, and people don't even know where it came from. Those Italians. And this whole entire film comes to the most poignant emotional climax. And this is, I love music documentaries, and this is a great one. I really, really love this.
Where is it available?
Showtime. It is on. It's a Showtime. I guess technically it's a Showtime original documentary because they're the ones who got the distribution for it.
Gotcha.
This one was a film that I watched for the second time and was lukewarm on it the first time I watched it, and this time around I think I got it. And this is Swiss Army Man.
I love that movie.
I was rewatching this because Robert
Oh
Bufard
yeah.
from SiftPop is going to come on and do an interview about it. And
Nice.
I, this time around, I have such an appreciation for Daniel Radcliffe as an actor at this
He's
point.
great.
And my
Anyone who
appreciation,
ever says that all he does is Harry Potter, nope. It's just show him this movie. Like, no, he's
they
much better.
haven't lifted their head out from under a rock.
Yeah.
If they think that. From I love him on the show Miracle Workers. Like just that
And he was
ridiculous
great,
comedy.
great in the Weird Al movie, an Al Yankovic story. He was
Him as
cracked me
Al
up.
Yankovic was the most
Cracked me
amazing
up.
thing. And him as a farting corpse in this is just something else. And Paul Dano.
So is this like a podcast about the Daniels? Or how did this I gotta know.
Well, so this is Robert's fourth interview, and because which one are you coming up on, Heath? Because how many have you
Third
done?
or fourth for sure. Probably fourth.
Let me double check here. Looking at my notes here.
But yeah, Swiss Army Man, directed by the
schedule.
Daniels, the Daniels that did Everything Everywhere All at Once. And it's a crazy movie for those who don't know. It's about a man who is run away from home and is living alone on a deserted island, and he finds a corpse on the beach, and apparently the corpse has magical powers and it can help him light fires, and he can shoot ammunition to help him hunt. And really it leads to a whole other series of revelations that the movie makes it very clear this is not what you think is happening, but by God, is it entertaining as hell, and it's certainly thought-provoking too.
Yeah, because like Heath, what you did with your because like you had your third interview and you did your film curriculum.
Yes.
Well, this part of
Gotcha.
So
I love it.
I rewatched it this morning. I'm like, yep, this
It's
clicked.
great.
Yep, this clicked in a whole other different way. And then because this is out on VOD, but more importantly HBO Max, I wanted to put Banshees of Inisherin because I got to watch this with my wife today, who already gave it a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. And just it just reinforced why this is my number one film of the year so far, and I just absolutely love it to pieces. And if it wasn't for Brendan Fraser, give Colin Farrell that Oscar.
Yeah.
Give Carrie Condon that Best Supporting Actress, maybe even the Pony. She was amazing. Poor Jenny.
Yeah.
Jenny gave an amazing performance as they should have that Oscar, which goes to non-human performances.
Yeah.
And Jenny the Pony would have gotten that. Like,
Jenny the Shetland Pony.
Yeah, 100% would have gotten that. So those are my recommendations. Those are our thoughts on West Side Story. incoming attractions for this week. But Heath, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.